Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to today's session of Roznama. Today is the 31st of March, and today we finally come to the end of March, which was a very, very long one. The first news is again in continuation with the Iran-Israel war and the US attack on Iran. So this one again, Trump is threatening to destroy Iran's oil sites, destroy the power sites, and they've said that has threatened to do this. And other than that, he's been continuously saying that Iran and Israel, Iran and US, they are on the negotiation table. So just a few days back, we did see things like that there was a 15-point agreement. The 15-point plan was sent by Donald Trump by USA, and it was supposed to be mediated by Pakistan. The 15-point negotiation program or a 15-point negotiation agreement was put forth in front of Iran, and Iran had put forth 5 demands to basically call off the entire war or to declare a ceasefire. All right. So US has continuously been saying that US has made great progress with a more reasonable regime in Iran. Now, just a little, a little into what is a more reasonable regime. A more reasonable regime here simply implies that the entire purpose of undertaking this attack on Iran was to bring about a regime change in Iran. One was to bring about a regime change, and the other was also to basically side Iranian international policy with the United States of America, and also to root out or curb the nuclear ambitions of Iran. Right? US Trump has always said that they are having good talks, good trade agreements. Somehow they are trying to negotiate with Iran, but Iran has always said that they are never in any direct negotiations with USA. And whatever claims that the US president is actually putting is basically all that is incorrect, and it is false. All right. Okay. Then the next is that the Iranian parliament are also now considering an exit from the nuclear treaty. Now, what is this nuclear treaty? This is the famous nuclear non-proliferation treaty. All right. So the nuclear non-proliferation treaty is the treaty which was signed in 1968. It is during the Cold War period, and it is also before the Iranian Revolution took place of 1979. So, as per the before the Iranian Revolution took place, the entire regime of Iran, it had more or less very favorable terms with the United States of America, and it tended to undertake such decisions which aligned with USA's interests. All right. So the same thing back then also, when this NPT was brought forth, it was US was one of the parties who had brought forth NPT, and Iran had signed NPT. What does NPT provide for? NPT signifies nuclear non-proliferation. Proliferation means spread. That is spread. That is, this particular treaty seeks to prevent the spread of nuclear energy and nuclear weapons into different countries. So Iran in 1968 had signed the nuclear non-proliferation treaty, and since then has been a part of the nuclear non-proliferation treaty, but now it is considering withdrawing from the nuclear non-proliferation treaty. All right. Now, has this happened any time before the present crisis? So yes, initially when the NPT was brought in 1968, there were only 3 countries who did not sign the NPT only, and it was India, Pakistan, and Israel. These were the 3 countries who did not sign the NPT in 1968 because they were reluctant, in the sense that India had this opinion that if the purpose of the NPT is to prevent the spread of nuclear weapon, then all countries must align their agenda, or then other countries must also practice nuclear disarmament. Other countries must also give up their nuclear weapons, and and US and other P5 members, they must give up their nuclear weapons if they are enforcing this treaty on other countries. But then US was naturally reluctant to give up its nuclear arsenals. So India also did not sign this treaty in order to undertake or ensure its internal as well as external security. All right. Other than that, there was one country which is North Korea. North Korea was one country which had signed the Nuclear Non-Proliferation Treaty in 1968. North Korea withdrew from the treaty in 2003 and since then has been building up its nuclear arsenal. All right. So this has been one instance where the country was a nuclear weapon country, was a signatory to the Nuclear Non-Proliferation Treaty, but now has given up its entire participation in NPT and has undertaken building up of nuclear arsenals. So along the same lines, even Iran could do so. Okay. Then, other than that, naturally, the war is going on in the entire West Asian region, and we've seen instances where Iran has undertaken airstrikes on its neighboring countries, specifically those countries who had who have had alliances with the United States of America and who permitted the United States of America to set up naval military bases in their respective US naval military bases in their respective countries. So Iran has undertaken attacks on these neighboring countries to destroy US military bases in these countries. All right. Now, there are a lot of countries in West Asia who are a part of NATO, and Turkey has been also suffering from the catastrophic events of the missile attacks, and it was seen that it was a fourth Iranian missile that was entering Turkey's airspace, and therefore Turkey has brought into consideration or just opened up the entire issue of NATO forces not undertaking defense effectively of that particular region. All right. So NATO has one article which is known as Article 5, and Article 5 simply implies the principle of collective security. All right. That an attack on any one member of NATO would be considered as an attack on all of them, and therefore the NATO military forces have to undertake defense of that respective country. So we did see that a few days back we have a lot of European countries who have been reluctant in joining their forces into NATO to provide military aid to these countries who are being affected by the present Iran-US war. And the second is that a lot of European Union countries, they want to distance themselves from the USA's war. All right. So that is why they've not permitted the use of NATO military forces in this particular war. Okay. Then again, a misnomer where Donald Trump has continuously said that they are making great progress on Iran, and but nothing of this sort has actually materialized. All right. Okay. Then, right now, I told you all that there are a lot of European countries who have denied to participate, who clearly said no that they are not going to participate in the present US-Iran war, and one of those countries is Spain. Just on Sunday, we had an article where the Spanish Prime Minister had actually given a 3-no, all right, in one of his speeches, and he said that he does not wish to be a part of this war. The last Iraqi war, Spain had participated from USA's side, which drew massive criticism to the Spanish government. So he did not wish to reiterate that mistake. And also, Spain said that Spain does not want to wish to ruin its relations with these with the West Asian countries. That is why they said that they don't want to be a part of the war. And not only did they say this, they also closed their airspace, which was maybe being used by the United States of America to send aircrafts, etc., drones, missiles to undertake attacks on Iran. All right. So Spain has closed their airspace for United States of America, which the US was using to undertake this illegal war on Iran. Okay. The same piece of news in other parts of the newspaper. Now, the next one is on Naxalism. Okay, now this is a significantly important piece of news. Why? Because last year the government at the center launched Operation Sankalp. Okay, it launched Operation Sankalp, or it launched Mission Sankalp. Okay. Now, what was the purpose of Mission Sankalp? Under Mission Sankalp, the Home Ministry had put this agenda that they would want to root out Naxalism, which was one of the basic causes, root out Naxalism, which was one of the major threats to India's internal security. Okay, they wanted to remove this, which was a part of India, which is a major threat to India's internal security. We've had previous presidents, prime ministers like Manmohan Singh, who actually had issued a statement that Naxalism is the single most threatening threat to India's internal security. And under Operation Sankalp or Mission Sankalp, the Home Ministry had set this target that they are going to root out Naxalism from India by 31st of March 2026. All right. Now today is the 31st of March, and naturally the Home Minister was called up for questioning in the Lok Sabha. So he did stand up and he said that Naxalism is more or less wiped out from India, from Bastar. Bastar was actually the region which is considered as the core hub of Naxalism in the country. It is a small forested region in Chhattisgarh. And he said that India has become almost Naxal free. And he also said that we only have two Maoist districts, two Maoist affected districts in India. All right, now what is Naxalism? Naxalism is a left wing extremist movement. Left wing meaning that people who align themselves with the socialist ideology. And as per Naxalism, what they believe is that there is so much of poverty, unemployment, underdevelopment, chaos in the country only because the government is not working effectively for the people, and the government is making the rich richer while the poorer are being furthermore neglected. Okay, so this is what they had. This is what Naxalite ideology or left-wing extremism believes, and therefore they want to root out the legitimately elected government by use of violence. All right, so naturally it is a very, very violent movement. It threatens India's internal security. That is why the government had an agenda of rooting out Naxalism by 31st of March 2026, which they have significantly not been able to do as of now. All right, then the next one is on census. We are now from 1st of April, the first census phase is set to begin, and the earliest census data will be available to us in 2027. This is the announcement that has been made by Mrityunjay Kumar Narayan. So do keep his name in mind. He is the present Census Commissioner of India, Mrityunjay Kumar Narayan. All right. Now, this particular census was a census that was supposed to be taken place in 2021, but couldn't be held because that time we had COVID pandemic that was going on in the country, and now the same census exercise is being conducted in 2026, 2027, and we are going to get a concerted census data in 2027. What is census? Census is simply enumeration of the entire population in the country, the demographic structure, occupational structure, their economic stature. Okay. Now, this time, for the first time, caste census has also been aligned or has been made a part of the census this time. Okay. So, other basics about census, that India for the first time had non-synchronous census in the year 1972. This was undertaken by Lord Mayo. And then we had the first synchronous census in 1881 under Lord Ripon. And in 1881, the census commissioner was W.C. Loudon. All right. So since then, we've had census every year. Every 10 years, it is a decadal exercise, but we did not have it twice. One was in 1941 because of the ongoing Second World War, and the next one has been in 2021 because of the COVID pandemic. All right. Then also it is anticipated that in this census, we will basically see that now India has less number of villages and more number of cities or urban areas. So as per the 2011 census, it was basically believed that the entire country has around 68% of rural areas and 32% urban areas. All right. So now hopefully this is set to change in this census. All right. So matlab concerted developmental activities have been undertaken in the country. Okay. The same piece of news in another newspaper. You all can go through it. Okay, then another is that the center is seeking to bring in new regulation to cover social media users. Okay. So the union government is planning to allow Ministry of Information and Broadcasting to send down notices to individual users for the social media posts. All right, so this was a news piece that was in news just a few days back, that a lot of notices were issued to certain X users, Instagram users, for content that they had posted on their social media handles, which was derogatory to the government, or which was against the, which was anti-government in nature. All right, so the government has now sought to incorporate new social media guidelines under the information technology rules. All right. Okay. Then the Apollo, the Artemis mission is set to take sail very soon, and for this we have 4 new crew members for Artemis mission, which is almost the second manned mission to the moon of the United States of America. The first one was Apollo, and since then now this is Artemis 2, which is going to take first manned mission to space. All right, and then the significance of this particular crew is that they are it is very, very diverse. We have a woman here, we have a person of color, and we have a Canadian who is going to fly in this particular rocket. All right, then this article gives you a good detail into what the mission actually plans to do, and the mission is supposed to be of a 10-day long mission. Okay, then coming to the editorials for today, the first one is on US and Iran war. It is a good take, and it basically says that US in certain statements has portrayed this or has flagged this, that it is willing to undertake a ground attack on Iran. All right, a ground attack simply implying that it is going to undertake a ground invasion of Iran, and this, the editorial tells us, that is only going to make matters worse, because now we are in the 31st day of the war, and in spite of Iran suffering from whatever shortcomings, economic fallbacks, inflation, unemployment, poverty, in spite of all of this, it was seen that Iran has still, somehow upheld its ground in the war and has not stooped down under US pressure. All right, and also we did see in the big just a week back, that the United States of America had threatened Iran to, if Iran does not open the Strait of Hormuz within 48 hours, then they're going to bomb the then they are going to undertake bombings of electricity supply or other electricity generating energy regions in Iran. So Iran did not again stoop down to pressure and said that it would not undertake any such it wouldn't stoop to under pressure to open up the Strait of Hormuz anytime soon. So this basically tells us that in spite of everything that US has inflicted on Iran, Iran is still holding its ground. So if they do undertake a ground war, there is a high probability that Iran would still be able to hold its ground, and it will only make matters worse for the United States of America. All right. Then the next is again on interfaith marriages. So this article basically simply says that if recently we've seen things like states like Maharashtra and states like UP, etc., even Chhattisgarh for that matter, table bills which are anti-conversion bills. Basically, they want to moral police people who are converting. They've converting their religions to other religion, and they've set down certain timelines, like if within 25 days the converted person does not register their conversion, then their conversion would be considered as null and void. And also, if a person who's showing their will or eagerness to convert, then it has to be published outside a court notice, and if anybody, they basically show any such any reservations as to somebody's conversion, then it would be declared as null and void. The person would not be permitted to convert their religion. So the article basically says that it takes away somebody's right to freedom of religion, that it prevents any person to profess a religion of their choice. And although it is the government duties to prevent any forceful conversion, to prevent fraudulent practices in the name of converting people to one's religion for any illegal practice, for any misuse. But then again, with bringing such stringent laws, you are actually not letting that individual practice the religion or faith that they wish. All right. Okay. Then again, this particular article is on delimitation, the various provisions of delimitation. Article 81, which provides for delimitation. Article 82, which makes provisions for delimitation of seats for the Lok Sabha. Talks about Article 81, which fixes the total number of seats in the Lok Sabha on the basis of population. And then they are saying that there has been this massive problem with southern states and the northern states, where the southern states are saying that their population has significantly reduced, due to which there could be chances that their number of seats in the Lok Sabha could be reduced as compared to the previous one. Then it tells us about the 42nd Constitution Amendment Act and then the 84th Constitution Amendment Act, which froze delimitation of seats up till 2026. Now they are set to undertake this delimitation exercise, and also the article is talking about maybe reconsidering that only population should not be considered as the criteria to align seats to the Lok Sabha. Maybe they could look into other things also, like total fertility rate. If total fertility rate is being reduced, or concerted steps are being taken, or effective steps have been undertaken to reduce the total fertility rate in respective states, so that should also be seen as a consideration while undertaking delimitation. Okay. Then shielding choice from honor. This particular article editorial talks about honor killing in the country, where last year it was seen that a girl who wished to marry outside her caste in Karnataka was killed because she was marrying outside her caste. And this basically tells us that there is again no freedom of choice under Article 21 to individuals in the country to still marry out of their own choice, and still marry, things like marriage, etc., limited within the caste system. And this basically draws our attention to the greater problem, that is still the problem of caste discrimination and untouchability in the country. Okay. Then the next question, the next article editorial is a deep dive on the implications of euthanasia. So we've seen Harish Rana, the first case in India where passive euthanasia was permitted. So passive euthanasia simply implies that life support of any person is taken away who has been in a vegetative state and basically showing no signs of recovery in the near future. All right. But then it again draws us to another question, that everybody in the country has been given the right to palliative care. Palliative care here simply implies that if somebody is unwell, or if somebody is in a vegetative state, maybe they still have the right to be taken care of. All right. So that is what the entire debate about. That is what has been debated about in this article. Okay. Then in USA, in Los Angeles, we saw that a ruling was brought in for social media, where it was said that Meta and YouTube, they frame their algorithm in such a manner that the using social media platform becomes very, very addictive to people. All right. So here the jury had even awarded a $3 million compensation in damages, where 70% was to be paid by Meta, 30% was to be paid by YouTube, to a person who claimed that she was intensely addicted to using social media because of the entire algorithm development of these social media platforms. The algorithm development here entails that, whatever you've been doing in other platforms, the same thing of your respective interest is shown in various platforms. Then also it shows that there is unlimited scrolling, there is no limit to content, which makes social media addictive. So this also takes a toll on somebody's mental health, somebody's body image, and it gives us a large number of data which shows that a lot of girls in US, etc., have become prone to having certain opinions about body images because of everything that has been happening on social media, because of their addiction to social media. All right. Okay. Then this particular article, which is with respect to foreign affairs, and which is about our present country and how India's neutral stance that India basically takes and has been taking since the inception of NAM in 1955, that India never stands up in support of any of the warring parties. But here, when we look here, so here it was a clear, taking away somebody's sovereign rights, taking away somebody's territorial rights and integrity, and India did not voice an opinion. Rather, India went to Israel. The Prime Minister visited Israel, which basically showed that maybe the Prime Minister is aligning with the Israeli Prime Minister's entire agenda for a respective war. All right. So here they basically say that India's role here in this particular war, because India believes in the philosophy of Vasudhaiv Kutumbakam, etc., and that all the world is our family, is one family, and we must foster dialogue, diplomacy, etc. So here, India should actually act as a peacemaker through maybe negotiating, maybe by bringing its entire ideas on the negotiating table, and also by standing with what is actually correct and what is okay. All right. Then this article again shows us that last year both of these countries, Bangladesh and Nepal, they suffered from massive Gen Z revolutions, which resulted in killing of a large number of people. And then there were interim governments which were set up in these respective countries, and then both these countries, they did see new elections that took place and formation of new governments. So right now Dhaka has moved forward in the sense that Dhaka is now aligning everything that the new government seeks to do in Bangladesh, while Kathmandu is somehow reeling back in the sense that we did see that the newly elected Prime Minister ordered the arrest of the Prime Minister, the former Prime Minister KP Sharma Oli, and the Foreign Minister Lekha to be arrested and then to be imprisoned. So basically, they're not moving forward. However, we did see that Dhaka is moving forward with aligning new policy program, giving recognition to genocide day, etc. Okay. All right. Then this piece of editorial, it talks about the recent Olympic Committee decision, which said that any female who was maybe a transgender and failed in the SRY test, which was your hormone determination test, if you did fail in it, then you will not be permitted to compete in female sports. And this was just undertaken. This decision was undertaken so that the entire Olympic games are free and fair and just, in the sense that anybody who was maybe who was a transgender and competing in a female sport would have better stamina, more strength, and maybe would have an upper hand as compared to its female counterpart. But then again, it takes us back to the question of right to equality. If somebody recognizes themselves as a transgender woman, then we must recognize them as enabling them to compete in the female category. All right. Okay, then this article is a wonderful article where Yogendra Yadav has basically talked about the status of denotified tribes in the country and has called for their identification, their enumeration in the census, and the census being their only hope. It tells us that how these denotified tribes, they have suffered since before independence, and in 1872 the British government had not given recognition to these tribes and even categorize these tribes as criminal tribes. So that was something that had to be fixed, and that was something that has remained with these tribes since then. However, in 1952 there was a change in the domestic policy of the government, where the government did remove the criminal status associated with these tribes and recognize them as denotified tribes. But because they are denotified tribes, they are very, very remotely based in the country, have absolute zero connect with the outside world. Their development level is very, very less. They have linguistic barriers, they have economic barriers, they have other barriers, which further degrades their entire developmental prospects in the country and amalgamation with the mainstream population in the country. So this could be fixed only with the census giving recognition to them and the government undertaking such policies, programs, which could bring about their development holistically in the country. All right. Then the next article is a deep dive on the Maoist movement. The government has somehow not been able to root out Naxalism. We still have 2 districts which are infested with Naxalism. However, the government is saying that more or less Naxalism has been uprooted. Not only has Naxalism been uprooted, but we've also seen that the major leaders who were the Naxal leaders, either some of them have surrendered, some of them been killed, or they have been arrested. So the entire Politburo or the basic functioning centralized structure of Naxalism has been uprooted in the country. So now, in maximum regions, it has been uprooted. So what is the way forward for these regions? The way forward suggested here is that the government shouldn't leave these regions untethered, and powers and authorities must be aligned in these regions, and then only should, uh, then considerable developmental aspects should be instilled in these regions who were erstwhile Naxalite regions, just to ensure that a fair transition takes place and the people who have recently surrendered, they do not lapse back into the grip of left-wing extremism. All right, then coming to the news in short, the first one is that we've seen a bill, a private member's bill in the Legislative Assembly of Jammu and Kashmir, which has called for, division of Jammu and Kashmir into various other districts also. For that matter, a separate this division to be created for the Chenab and Pir Panjal regions of Jammu division. This comes after the central government had proposed the carving out of Jammu district from the Kashmir region. And then again, we know that this is a Jammu and Kashmir is a union territory with the Legislative Assembly. And whenever any bill, etc., is being tabled here, final nod has to be given by the Lieutenant Governor of this respective union territory. All right. Okay. Then the next question, the next news in short that you have to keep in mind, that since 2nd, 3rd of January, when USA launched Operation Absolute Resolve in Venezuela to catch hold or to arrest President Maduro. After that, now US reopens its embassy in Caracas, and this basically shows us that maybe relations between US and Venezuela are now warming up. Okay. Then recently, the World Trade Organization's 14th ministerial meet came to a conclusion. The meet was being held in Cameroon, and the meet has been ended. However, no decisive action, no decisive decision has been made, and discussions have been further moved on to Geneva. All right, the entire discussion was on e-commerce and how a greater waiver of 5 years must be given to countries in terms of carbon management, but US wanted it to be 2 years, other countries wanted it to be 5 years. So again, it is till now very indecisive. Then the next one is a very small art. It's a sweet take on it. You all can go through, and it is on how well the forest authorities of the Kuno National Park are actually been working to provide a good adjustable environment for the translocated cheetahs who have been brought in from Namibia, Africa, and Botswana to India. And it actually shows us the story of Mukhi, who in the beginning of her lifetime had actually suffered from massive fractures and was sick and not well, but the authorities looked after her, and today she's a mother of 5 new cubs. All right. Okay, then Rajasthan has shown concerns over the transgender bill. The Rajasthan High Court has raised concerns over the transgender bill. The transgender bill has been recently passed by both houses of parliament, and this bill seeks to take away one important clause of the 2019 Transgender Protection Act, which basically said that the 2019 which gave transgender people the right to self-identification, self-declaration, that if they themselves recognize themselves as a transgender, then it was considered to be as conclusive and decisive. However, that has now been replaced by a medical board examination and a final agreement to it by the district magistrate or the district commissioner. All right. Then Nitish steps down as Bihar legislator. That is, he has resigned as an MLA from Bihar because now he is been elected to the Rajya Sabha. However, he is still the CM, and he will remain CM when a new CM has been appointed in Bihar. All right. Then because of the entire war of late, the rupee has crossed the $95 mark, in the sense that $1 is now equal to 95 rupees. However, the finance minister is saying that the rupee is still doing fine. All right. Then the Myanmar Janta, also the Janta chief, steps down and has now been sort of vouched to become the president of Myanmar. All right. So the Myanmar Janta head was Min Aung Hlaing, and now he's been stepping down as that because he wants to become the president of Myanmar. All right. Then Israeli parliament has passed a death penalty law for Palestinians who've been guilty of legal attacks that were assassination of killing of arrest of death penalty has been a law has been passed which gives death penalty to Palestinians who've been convicted of causing any fatal attack, any lethal attack to Israel. All right. Okay, so that was all for today's newspaper analysis, and I'll see you all tomorrow with the next. Thank you, children.